Hi, you're listening to Dusk to Dawn, reading horror and weird fiction. We're your hosts, Amber and Dan.
Find any trigger warnings in our episode notes. We're happy you're joining us and enjoy the show. Hey ho, welcome to episode 3 of our second season. And today is a very fun one. It's a tingler, you might say.
Tingle, tingle, tingle.
Sounds like you're peeing.
That would be tinkle. Thank you very much.
All right, so here's a trilogy of books I never expected to read about. This author wrote Pounded in the Butt by My Own Butt, followed by Pounded in the Butt by My Book, Pounded in the Butt by My Own Butt, followed by Pounded in the Butt by My Book, Pounded in the Butt by My Book, Pounded in the Butt by My Own Butt. This is a horror podcast. You haven't turned on the wrong podcast. We've got a fun one today.
I want to keep going a little bit. How about Pounded in the Butt by My Constantly Changing Thoughts on the Ongoing Mystery of Chuck Tingle's Real Identity?
Or Conservative, pounded by the realization that the protest music he grew up on does not actually support his current hateful ideology.
Pounded in the Butt by My Bizarre Assumption that Chuck Tingle books are just covers and not actual books.
Living inside my own butt for 8 years, starting a business and turning a profit through common sense reinvestment and strategic targeted marketing.
Okay, last one. Turned gay by the existential dread that I may actually be a character in a Chuck Tingle book. So that's Chuck Tingle. That's one side of Chuck Tingle. That is his erotica side. He is a prolific author of erotica.
Over 400 published stories.
Yeah, I wouldn't call them books per se. They're probably more like flash fiction and short stories. He also has 3 traditionally published horror novels.
Wait, 4?
4?
We have Straight, Camp Damascus.
Oh, Straight.
Bury
yes.
My Gaze.
Sorry, I've
not
read...
Bury My Gaze, Bury Your Gaze.
Your Gaze.
And today's book, Lucky Day.
Yes, I have read 3 of his 4. My apologies.
Let's go right into the author summary, which is just going to be the tip of the iceberg in this episode because we're going to be talking about this author a lot. If you think that the author should be separated from their books, don't listen to this episode because I think they are completely intertwined.
I mean, to be fair, he doesn't break the fourth wall. He's not in this book.
True.
Spoiler, maybe? I don't know.
So Chuck Tingle is a 2-time Hugo Award finalist, more on that later, a Bram Stoker Award nominee, Goodreads Award nominee, Golden Poppy Award finalist, which is a California award. I looked it up. Had never heard of it.
Poppies.
And an Audie Award winner. He is a mysterious force of energy behind sunglasses and a pink mask, and is also an anonymous author of romance, horror, and fantasy. I think romance is underselling it there.
I also think it's more of a bag on his head than a mask.
Yeah, it's definitely a bag. Chuck was born in Home of Truth, Utah, and now lives in Los Angeles, California. He writes to prove that love is real because love is the most important tool we have when resisting the endless cosmic void. Not everything people say about Chuck is true, but the important parts are.
I mean, if you're from a place called Home of Truth, you're going to combat the dark cosmos. I mean, that's just...
And combat them he has.
Yes.
Usually I write my own author summary, but in this case, I mostly took from what he had written because it's just so good.
Wait, he said he wears a mask, not a bag? Interesting.
Yes.
Huh.
Interesting.
That's...
Maybe
that's a bag.
That's like a big difference.
That's
Hold on.
a bag on his head.
Now I have to make sure I didn't screw it up, but I'm pretty sure that's...
I mean...
He says pink mask, and then it's next to a picture with him with a bag on his head. So, Chuck, come on now. I know you're writing 400
You're an
plus
author.
books.
You should know the difference between a bag and a mask, man.
Okay. All right. So, Chuck Tingle, as a horror author, has 4 books to his name. Is he still Chuck? Chuck Tingle is just his pen name, right? He doesn't have like other pen names that we are aware of.
No,
it's just Chuck Tingle.
He just is Chuck Tingle.
All right, so in terms of becoming a Hugo Award finalist, the story behind this is actually quite funny and infuriating in equal measure. Do you know anything about this?
Absolutely nothing.
Okay, so I believe it was we'll call it 2013. You know the Hugo Awards for science fiction and fantasy. Yeah, it's fantasy too, right?
Yeah, I know that.
So as right-wing America likes to do, they were...
Oh, for a second I thought you were going to say he was right-wing. I was like, whoa,
he's not right-wing.
Talk about major shift in politics.
So there was frustration on the right that people who are not old white men were writing science fiction, and that they were writing science fiction about characters who were not white men as captains on spaceships fighting aliens, right? I mean, how could you?
I think this is starting to sound familiar. I might know this story.
This sounds like it's the Gamergate of science fiction and fantasy, if you're familiar with that.
Yes, well, I am at least.
Yeah. Okay, so people on the right were upset that there was like more diversity and representation within science fiction because that was ruining science fiction.
I mean, look at Star Trek getting all political these days. It's awful.
Which is funny because Star Trek fits within the description of what all these people want. It's like a white dude piloting a spaceship in space, but it's so like not about that kind of ideology.
We shouldn't get into this, but very briefly, because I can't leave that as the last word. There was a lot. I mean, yes, Kirk was a white man fighting aliens in space, but he had a black woman who was his communications officer on the bridge, which right there was pretty fantastic for the time. So
what are these people in 2013 upset about? Do they just like
pander to a point is what I was going to say. What was your question?
Well, it's just like, it's not like representation was new or anything, but I'm getting...
No, but people still to this day complain about Star Trek getting political. Like a lot of people really don't like Discovery because it's a black woman as the main character. And, oh, it's so horrible. And it's like, okay, how have you gone...
Have you watched this show?
How have you gone your whole life and not... like connected the dots? I don't know, but anyway.
All right, so back on track for his Hugo Award nomination. This is just great. So, there's all these people that are upset that like the world is changing and there are more voices in it now, right? Or at least more. There have always been more
amplification.
There we go.
Yeah.
And so there was this right-wing group called the Sad Puppies.
Wait, are you serious?
Yes, the Sad Puppies.
What the fuck?
And they were like, they were upset about all this stuff happening in science fiction and fantasy. And then they had an extremist, offshoot called the Rabid Puppies. And what they did is they basically like used block voting to help vote authors that they approved of for Hugo nominations. Like everybody in our hate group, let's vote for these like white authors that are conservative or whatever. But what happened in Chuck Tingle's case is because he had been known as an author with, insane book titles. And in this case, the book title that they all voted for, ironically, was Space Raptor Butt Invasion. They're like, all right, we're going to get this guy to be on the like list of nominated authors as a joke because it's so ridiculous that, this gay man would write, I don't know if it's a novel, but a story called Space Raptor Butt Invasion. So he ended up being nominated in the short story category and he just ran with it. He like...
Fuck yeah. What else are you going to do? That's amazing.
He did not win the Hugo Award that year, but
did he at least get like a sticker with a star? Like, I don't know. Good for you.
But what's great is like, because of like these right wingers jokes, like trying to, humiliate him or whatever, they ended up giving him like a much bigger platform because then a bunch of people found out about, all his ridiculous story titles and all this kind of stuff.
Hooray for right wing fascism backfiring.
And he ended up writing a story called I think it was like Pounded in the Butt by my Hugo Award nomination. So and the reason he's a 2-time Hugo Award finalist is the first time was like the right-wing joke, and then he was followed up again, I think more seriously, as like a fan author, just like an author that has like a great community, partly because he was platformed by these people who hated him.
Wow. Okay. I remember hearing that like his erotica stemmed from some kind of backlash, but I didn't realize what it was.
You know, it's funny. One of the books that really pissed off these people we have on our shelf. I haven't read it yet, though, which is a good amount of books on our shelves. But The Fifth Season by N.K. Jemisin. Apparently that made people mad because she's not a white man.
Wow, they must really hate Le Guin, huh?
Oh, my God. Yeah, so I don't know, just like absolutely ridiculous kind of stuff. But what was intended as a smear campaign ended up bringing Chuck Tingle and his love Tingleverse to a much wider audience, which is just like a great effect for something that was like born out of hate.
Yeah, it's unfortunate that that is the reason, but I'm glad in it. I guess silver lining. I'm glad it happened because now we have the Tingleverse.
Yeah, and I'm glad that he like took it and ran with it and made it work for him instead of, I don't know, being
grumpy or sad.
Yeah, grumpy or sad. Grumpy and sad.
A sad puppy.
Do not describe this author as far as I can tell. But in terms of horror, the horror books are definitely a little more serious. I mean, it still has they're still tingly, but they're not sex books. And well, I don't know.
They're
You've read more than
serious,
I have.
Actually.
Yeah.
This is probably of his horror the least serious of the three that I read. I read Camp Damascus first, and then I read Bury Your Gaze. And actually, I didn't even realize right off the bat that it was the same author. I actually don't know how I found out about his erotica. I think my friend Janice found out and then told me, and we had a really, really good chuckle over mainly the titles of his erotica, because they're just so outlandish and typically long and very thorough in their explanation of what the story's about. But yeah, I definitely found him through his horror and then was tickled pink.
And they're not all erotica. He does have some non-sex books. So the one that caught my interest was My Pool Gets Me Wet in a Completely Platonic Way, and Now We Are Close Friends.
I like how that's what I'm saying. Like he put plutonic in the...
Platonic. It's not like a Pluto. Pluto's like philosophy.
Wait, did you say the pool? Something about his pool?
Yes, I said.
That's why.
My pool gets me wet in a completely platonic way.
Plutonic. Pool tonic.
Pool tonic. It was her pool tonic in this story.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but see, even in the title, he says platonic. So it's a thing.
So his horror books are more serious. I really want to read Bury Your Gaze because that's just such a cool title. And it's a Hollywood horror, which sounds fun.
It is. It's a great read. It's critical of Hollywood and typecasting gay characters and such.
Yeah, I think the premise is there's like the main character has a TV show that they're the showrunner or something, right? But essentially the higher ups or whoever are basically like, "Ooh, you should kill all the gay characters."
Right, because there's the two main characters are women, and he finally writes the episode. There's like that sexual tension throughout the whole series, and then he finally writes the episode where they get together. And he's all excited. He's like, yeah, now I'm going to have them as a couple. And the execs are like, oh, now that you've had them like come together, you have to kill them off. And it was like, wait, what? Why? Well, that's just how it goes, you know? So you're not allowed to actually have a gay couple continuously on TV is the point. And then he's dealing with that. And then, you know, the underbelly of Hollywood. It's a fun read. It really is a good one.
Cool.
I mean, if this one wasn't new for us reading it and we were going to read a Tingle one, I would say that's what we should have read. But this one was new. So it was like, let's read the new one.
Yeah, here, let's go right into the summary for Lucky Day.
4 years ago, an unthinkable disaster occurred. In what was later known as the low probability event, 8 million people were killed in a single day, each of them dying in improbable, bizarre ways. Strangled by balloon ropes, torn apart by exploding manhole covers, attacked by a chimpanzee wielding a typewriter, a day of freak accidents that proved anything is possible, no matter the odds. Luck is real now, and it's not always good. Vera, a former statistics and probability professor, lost everything that day, and she still struggles to make sense of the unbelievable catastrophe. To her, the LPE, which is the low probability event, proved that the god of order is dead and nothing matters anymore. When Special Agent Layne shows up on Vera's doorstep, she learns he's investigating a suspiciously and statistically impossible lucky casino. He needs her help to prove the casino's success is connected to the deaths of millions. Because what's happening in Vegas isn't staying there, and she's the only thing that stands between the world and another deadly improbability. That's it. That's the summary.
Okay.
So I really enjoyed how this book started. I think we have opposite takes on that. I really enjoyed the very beginning. I thought the LPE, the low probability event, was hilarious. I loved how he drew out the initial scene where Vera's outside talking to her mom and it's raining, but it sounds weird. And then all of a sudden they notice that it's like these tiny fish, and then the fish start getting bigger, and then they're massive and they're like doing damage to things. It's kind of like Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs. Have you read that book as a kid? As a kid's book?
Yeah, it's been a while.
I think they made it into
I was a kid
movie
when I last
too.
read it.
Yeah, I loved that book. I read that all the time. I thought it was hilarious. And so right away, this book reminded me of that with the fish. And just the way that he drew it out in an interesting way. I was like, oh yes, I love his writing. So that was great. And then I just really liked Vera's character. So she was very prim and proper, very neat, very organized. You know, she has everything exactly the way it should be. She's a very mathematical mind. And then after this low probability event, she just becomes a disheveled mass of hopelessness. And I thought that that was really clever of him to have that transition from one extreme to the other. It really made me like Vera right away.
Like in the very beginning of the book, she's like hanging out with her.
It's a book her book release.
Yeah, she has a book release about probability stuff. She's like getting ready to go celebrate and go out to lunch with all of her friends and her mom and her fiance Annie. And it's funny because like the last thing her mom and her talk about is her mom's basically just like, while they're at lunch, Vera announces that her and Annie are engaged, and her mom's like, "Oh no, this is
it's
just
a phase."
This, yeah, no, don't do this. Like
being a lesbian's a phase.
Yeah,
she's like, "Mom, I'm bisexual."
I think the mom says something like, "Everyone's bisexual."
Everyone tries it out. Yeah.
Yeah. So the mom just being like, everything's going so well for you. Don't do this.
So denying her sexual identity.
Yeah, and I would assume this is the only Tingle book I've read, but based on what I've gotten from him, they it tackles this issue
of queerness. And yeah, Camp Damascus is a not gender affirming, but
gay conversion. No, it's not called that.
It's like a conversion camp, or like a fix your gayness, fix your queerness camp, and then bury your gays, as we already talked about a little bit. Is about, queerness in Hollywood and how it's sort of accepted, but not really. And then, so this one, her mother right away denies her sexual identity.
So Vera and her mom are like in the middle of this argument when the low probability event hits. And as Amber mentioned, fish start falling out of the sky. Oh, just like everything that could go wrong and is crazy happens. I got a little passage for you during the event. I liked this section with the parade balloons. So a massive parade balloon drifts past, blocking out the sun as it glides between the skyscrapers. I've seen these helium-filled creations on television before, but never have I witnessed their astonishing size in person. The balloon soars some 3 or 4 stories up, a colossal green dinosaur in a gray astronaut suit. This gigantic figure stares down at me with a wide, sharp-toothed grin, which might be fun and friendly if not for the horrific adornments that dangle just below it. At first, I'm not entirely sure what I'm witnessing, my mind unable to accept this uncanny display. The problem is not just how macabre the scene is, but how astronomically unlikely. There are at least 20 ropes hanging from the parade balloon, the strands typically used by handlers to lead inflated characters along a route. Instead of guiding this balloon, however, it appears The chaperones have gotten swept up in their own ropes. A host of lifeless bodies hang from the floating dinosaur, their corpses drifting down the street like puppets as they bounce against lampposts and twirl in the air. Every cadaver has a tangle of rope above it, somehow wrapping itself around each neck to create a sloppy noose.
It's such good writing. Like, I can so easily visualize it. And it's so dark, but it's also funny.
Yeah. And we have like a manhole cover that like blasts up out of the ground, rips somebody's face off, and a chimpanzee beating people with a typewriter. So it's just ridiculous.
And that's the point, right? Like the impossibility of all these events. And I love too, again, how Vera is a statistics professor. So she's sitting there like calculating like the chances of this happening is, 1 in 1 million or whatever. So
yeah, so her whole
opening to this
life
book
gets like overturned, and then it's like a 4 years later kind of thing after all these people have died, and her mom dies in the event, and like she gets separated from her friends, and then she's like all alone, basically living in like a trash strewn apartment, not caring about anything.
Yeah, she basically just eats ramen almost raw, and that's it. And she goes to the store like once a month and just buys a shitload of ramen, and that's it.
And like has cut off contact with her friends and her fiance, and is just like living in her own squalor and self-loathing bubble of just like everything doesn't matter anymore, and probability means nothing.
Yeah, I think though at first she thought everyone was dead, and then found out later. I think she like turns on her phone or something and gets all these texts and realizes that her fiance is alive. But at that point, she's just like, I can't deal with anyone anymore. Her world has been completely shattered, and she is a husk of a person.
Yeah, it's so sad.
But then adventure comes knocking, or actually basically busts down her door. In the form of
Agent Layne. So this is a character who is part of the low probability event commission, which is basically like, since this happened and like 8 million people died, obviously we want to find out what made all this crazy stuff occur. And so the government creates this commission, and what's strange is they have like zero oversight and they can do whatever they want. So he
basically
just
like ICE right now.
Yeah, so he just like busts down the door and is
you
like,
laugh, but it's true. Sorry, that was dark in a not fun way, but just so you have an idea.
Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of, and his whole thing is like, I have no oversight. I can do whatever I want. He busts in. She's like, what are you doing here? And he needs her help because there's a casino called the Great Britannica Hotel and Casino, owned by Everett Vacation and Entertainment. And what's so strange about this casino is that it's profitable, but the odds of people winning is like double what it is at any other casino. So it just doesn't make any sense.
In the gamblers' favor. So the people who are getting jackpots like twice as often as they could, for example.
Yeah, while the casino's still being profitable. So he's like, there's something going on here, and he recruits her by force, essentially, and he's pretty much the exact opposite of her, because at this point she's basically Daria. She's like, I don't care about anything, and it gets a little tiresome, but that changes halfway through. But anyway, and he's like basically a puppy dog, and he just thinks like life is great, and he wants to do he like collects swag everywhere he goes, and is like constantly has bags of new hobbies. I think he was trying to do like juggling at some point. He just like loves life and wants to try everything.
Yeah, see, he annoys me. Her dreary personality got to you, and his over-the-top excitement got to me.
Yeah, we'll talk about that a little bit later, because we had differing opinions. Like, if we graphed our interest in the book, they went in opposite directions.
Generally, yes.
Yeah, generally. So that's kind of the setup for the book is, this event happens and people die in crazy ways. So she gives up on everything. And then all of a sudden this agent comes through and is like, hey, let's get to the bottom of this. And she's like, fine, I'll do it. And so they start investigating. My thinking of this book and like understanding of how it correlates with Chuck Tingle went through like an interesting transition because I sort of knew about Chuck Tingle. I knew that he wore a bag over his head.
A mask.
It's a bag. And that he had like these erotica books with like ridiculous names. And that's all I really knew. I didn't really follow him on Instagram. I wasn't part of his Tingler universe or any of that kind of stuff. So I kind of went in the book being like, okay, like I hope this is good. I hope this isn't just like a dude who's really good at marketing and has a persona and is therefore able to write just decent books and get away with it. That's kind of how I went into it.
That's a fair assessment as an outsider.
Yeah.
I mean,
I was skeptical.
How many authors do you know that like wear bags on their head to hide their identity?
One.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm being a curmudgeon. I was like, I don't know. This sounds like a whole lot of marketing. And I don't know if that has changed much in my thinking, but after meeting him at a book event, it changed, and I started to get it.
Well, I wonder too, you know, with this whole thing with the Hugo Awards, I don't know if he was already doing his like shtick with the bag and stuff at that point, but I mean, I could understand where he'd be a little sensitive when you got right wingers coming after you. Also, with the variety of books that he writes. And maybe he just wants to keep private. I mean, that's totally fair. Yeah. I completely understand that.
Yeah. So I think I struggled with the first half of this book because I was like, okay, Vera is like, has given up on life. And Agent Layne is a puppy dog who loves everything about life. And I felt like that was drawn out for 100 pages and that they were just kind of like character types more than fully developed characters.
And see, I loved the fact that they played off of each other so well. Like they were so opposites that he would say something and her melancholy, morose response to his like really quirky, poppy personality was just hilarious to me, you know, and that's the kind of humor that I love.
Yeah, well, I went in, I think too, like, because of the low probability event and it being so weird, my first thought as a pretentious asshole was like, okay, all this crazy stuff is happening, but the prose itself was like, is just very, I don't know, it's very descriptive and like, here's what's happening. And I wanted the prose to be crazy too, to like match the craziness, but it kind of reads like commercial fiction while describing crazy things, where I wanted it to read crazy and be crazy. So I was caught up on the prose aspect of it.
What would you consider is crazy prose? Like, how do you quantify that? Like, do you have like an example of a book that does that?
The author who came to mind, and I haven't read his books in a while, but I was like, this needs to be a Chuck Palahniuk book where, I don't know. Okay. But I haven't read Chuck Palahniuk in so long.
It's a Chuck thing.
Maybe it is a Chuck thing. But I don't know. I felt like the way it's written is pretty like, it's well done, but it's definitely like commercial fiction lane where, I don't know. I just wanted to see a little more experimentation with the writing and just have it kind of throw me off in the way that the plot is supposed to be crazy. It just felt a little too straightforward for the wildness of the setting, if that makes sense.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. I wonder though if it would become overwhelming though, if it's just crazy on all fronts.
Maybe, but that would be cool, I think.
Yeah.
But then like halfway through the book, I went to the launch event for this book at our local Pals Books and got to meet Chuck Tingle. I mean, you know, met as in I was in the audience. And
yeah, he didn't do signing, right?
No, he didn't do signing. He did pictures, but there was a bunch of people and I don't want to wait that long just for a picture. So we didn't get it, but it was a small group. I mean, small as in there were maybe like 100 people there, maybe something like that.
That's pretty big for
okay, maybe not small
author event.
I don't know. It felt intimate just because this guy has so much charisma and just gave the funniest book talk. I mean, he was like asking questions of the audience of like, let's find out what kind of horror character you would be. And it was like, who would be Leprechaun or who would be Two-Face or who would be their doppelganger, and asking like doing pros and cons of each of those characters and which dating apps they'd be on and whether they were top, bottom, or switch. And it was funny too, because he's like, all right, who here would, or not be these characters, date these characters. And he was like, who wants to date the leprechaun? And, being of Irish descent, I was like clapping and shouting, but like only one other person in the crowd did that with me. Whereas everyone was
you weren't in Boston, I guess.
Yeah, everyone was like clapping and shouting for Two-Face and Doppelganger and stuff. But for Leprechaun, I was getting ready to compete with the crowd, and there was not much competition, which was a lot of fun. And he put up like, because he addressed the fact that like people who are here for Lucky Day obviously know I'm a horror author, but did you know I also have this erotica background? So he did this competition where he'd put up in one of his book covers and he'd say like 3 or 4 names of it, and people had to vote on what they thought the name of the book actually was. And that's when I found out about My Pool Gets Me Wet in a completely platonic way, and now we are close friends. So it was just a lot of fun. You could tell he's just having a great time. It felt like a shtick, and it was done really well at the same time.
That's fair. That's fun. And actually, I know you went with Janice, and she said that she realized with talking with her friend who lives in New York, is that in New York, most people in the audience knew his work through his horror. And here in Portland, it was mostly through his erotica. So
I can believe that.
So typical Portland, right?
Yeah. Yeah. He definitely made some Portland jokes. I was like one of the most normal looking people in that crowd for sure.
You normie.
Yeah, I'm the normie. But yeah, and he, kept calling us his buckaroos and stuff. Like, I think that's a fairly common term that he uses for his fan base.
He has it in one of his titles too.
And buckaroos. Yeah. Hopefully it wasn't, I don't know, maybe it's pounded in the butt by buckaroos, or probably something funnier than that.
I think it was like his coloring book or something. Like
he has a role-playing game too. He has character sheets on his website.
Oh, that's fun. We should try one of those ones.
But yeah, he was just like, and very positive, and it felt like, I think I sort of got what he's doing with this book. Yeah, so to kind of tie it back to Lucky Day, and we'll go back and forth between talking about Chuck Tingle and the book, but I started to realize that his approach with this book was essentially like, he had this great question. He had this great like phrase where he was like, a lot of people approach the chaos of the world today, and I'm going to paraphrase this, and they're like, with all the chaos and hatred going on today, why? Why should I even try? Everything's fucked, right? And then he like switched it, and he's like, with all this chaos and hate and like uncertainty going on, why not? And that's his approach. He's like, why not do what you want to do? Why not go after that thing you want to go after? Because life is crazy. And it's such a huge shift between why should I try and why not try because nothing matters anyway, right? It still accepts the fact that the world is crazy and there's a lot of things out of our control, and there's a lot of things that like scare us and frustrate us and humiliate us and all that. But so what? Like, just do what you want to do, because otherwise you'll be like Vera in the first 100 pages of this book and just like lay around and be miserable.
So basically he's saying glass half full as opposed to half empty. Yeah,
I'd say so. And so that kind of clicked for me that like with this book and probably with his other books is definitely, it's so intertwined with him and his message. And he's more like creating a scenario that tries to give people agency to be more confident in themselves and go after the things they love. So I think it's so interesting because there's the whole concept of like, does the author matter? And before I went to the author event, I was like, I'm just going to judge this book on its own merits and not think about the author. But then I met the author, and he was so charming and great that I can't not tie him into it. And I think in his case, it makes the whole reading experience better.
That's a nice thing to have, especially with some controversy about other authors that people have loved for a very long time. One in particular I'm thinking of, yeah. That he actually has a a playoff of in his erotica.
Do you have the name of that one up?
Harry Plorber or something.
And I think too, like, I don't know, maybe you could say he's even protesting in a sense.
Oh, for
Yeah,
sure.
totally
It's trans wizard Harriet Porber and the bad boy Parasaurolophus. Ugh, is one of them.
But it's just great to have someone who, I guess, is an activist, but in the sense, the reason I struggle with that is because it's so fun. He does it so well. He does it in like a positive, just crazy way. Like, you know what? All you guys telling me about how I need to live my life, I'm just going to write a book called Space Raptor Butt Invasion, and it's going to piss off some conservatives, and their anger is going to skyrocket my platform. And just how cool is that?
Yeah, I love like the freedom that it allows for. Like it's just so refreshing that you can just enjoy something that is so out there and not controlled and not worrying about market value and what's popular right now. Just do your fucking thing. And
yeah,
I get that vibe from him very heavily.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. And so that really translates back to this book.
Well, I'm glad you went to the event because I kind of had to twist your arm there since I was out of town. Yeah.
Yeah, well, that was always, I was just like, I'm just so tired of like big social media personalities. I don't know. Maybe I was just feeling curmudgeon-y. But
you're kind of just a curmudgeon.
Yeah.
I mean, Grady Hendrix was a fabulous.
Yeah, that sounded like it was a lot of fun.
And I don't know, even when they just sit and talk about the book and do a little reading, I think it's fun because you're showing them support. And wouldn't you want that as an author? Totally.
I just think author events are kind of boring when they're just like, here's a passage from the book. But that's, you know what? I'm even changing on that because we just went to one of those events for the, what's
Caitlin
it called?
Starling, yeah.
For the Starving Saints?
The Starving Saints, yeah.
Yeah, and that was a lot of fun.
And Wendy Wagner was there as well.
So yeah, I don't know. I guess it's all about how you approach it.
I mean, it was cool. We got pins. We got like a really cool, rather large pin with a bee on a half of a pomegranate. I mentioned that to our friend John, and he said that does relate to the book, but I haven't read it yet, so we'll see.
All right, so but lucky day. Let's talk a little bit about. We've got Agent Layne and we've got Vera, and they end up going to this casino that has these crazy odds that don't make any sense. And what happens?
So they go there, and Agent Layne pretty much can do whatever the hell he wants. Like he's like, we're staying here, we're going through all your stuff. And everyone is pretty much like, okay, because we have to, you know. And he's aware they're going to scrub their computers of anything malicious, but he already got everything. So, you know, his special twist thing or whatever.
Well, this is cool. Let's describe this because this was probably his cleverest moment in the book. So he goes in and they meet Miss Denver White, who is the 33-year-old billionaire cowgirl who is the owner of the casino.
She's like the executive who's in charge of it, but she's not the absolute top.
Right. But so basically he's like, hey, we want all of your files and you have to give them to us. And then Vera's like, well, that's dumb. She's just not going to give you the important stuff. But he had already gotten everything. And so his tactic is to compare all of the information he already got with everything she gives him after this request, and then seeing what she left out compared to the original documents. And those are probably important documents, which is pretty clever.
Yeah.
Is that like basic? I was impressed.
No, I think it was impressive too. Yeah. I don't know. It just, okay. So I really enjoyed the beginning, and I started to lose my love for it a bit because it started to become less chaotic, and I don't know, it came to feel more like a crime novel after a while, and it was okay.
Yeah, I see what you mean. It's more of a
I wanted more chaos, and I wanted a lot more of like the character interactions between Vera and Agent Layne, and I feel like once they go to the casino and they start doing the actual mystery, a lot of that started to feel very surface level. Vera's like, oh, we're partners. And it's like, what? You've been together for a week, you know? And I like that she starts to care and stuff, but she's already complaining about him not including her on things. And it's like, I thought you didn't give a shit. Like, what are you moping about? Like, don't you just want to go home anyway? So I don't know exactly I can't put my finger exactly on what started to nag at me, but I think the solving of the mystery felt a little too basic to me, like with the opening of this absolute chaos. And there's the pool scene. That's amazing. Speaking of Chuck Palahniuk, it has a little bit of the haunted flair in that scene, but I don't know, it just felt like it calmed down way too much for my expectations. And I felt that their interactions started to not be as hilarious to me.
Interesting, because I was like, finally something's happening. I felt like that the book kind of went on about how she didn't care about anything, and Agent Layne cares too much about everything. So I was glad to like see them start doing some stuff. And it's cool because they go into Denver's office when they first meet the owner of the casino, or the executive, and she's like basically playing Duck Hunt on like an enormous wall-sized screen. It's just like a ridiculous person in cowboy boots and a cowboy hat, and they're like they can't tell if she's being real or just like being ridiculous and putting on a show. It's a good character for someone who's in charge of a casino.
It's a good antagonist, yeah, for sure. She fits the Vegas vibe, which again, it reminds me of the head of the cowboy park in Nope.
Oh yeah. Yeah, totally.
Speaking of monkeys attacking people or chimpanzees attacking people, hey, I actually just connected that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I wonder if he read or watched Nope and got some inspiration from that. But yeah, I mean, it was good. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like I couldn't wait to put it down. I still really enjoyed the second half, but I don't know. I think it came out real strong for me, and it's hard to keep up that pacing and that amount of chaos, I guess, for an entire novel.
So you liked the characters and their interactions with each other.
Yeah, but then it started to feel more surface level once they started doing the mystery. It felt like the whole buildup of how they were playing off of each other just kind of wilted away and became unimportant. Like when they get into the SUV with Denver and Agent Layne's like, well, I'll ride with her. And Vera's like, oh, well, I guess I'll go in the other car. She seemed to care so much. And I was like, okay, well, this will probably lead to something, right? And it didn't. It just that just was what happened. And I was like, well, they should be playing off of each other in that regard. You know, there should be a reason he's trying to get information from Denver and then we'll share it with her, or maybe she'll get information from the people in the other car. But it just was him being a jerk, I guess. That just felt counterintuitive to the initial buildup. So I think the story didn't disappoint me, but the characters themselves did after a while, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
And to that point with the two of them, I think what was interesting, and maybe his point, was the more that Vera started to care, the less it felt like Agent Layne cared about their relationship, and just about things in general. So it's almost like they had a role reversal, which doesn't really make sense for his character. I don't know. I guess I'm stuck on this, and I can't, like I said, I can't put my finger on exactly what it was that nagged at me, but clearly I had an issue with it.
Yeah. As Chuck Tingle himself mentioned, he did write 400 plus erotica stories. So, I mean,
what does that have to do with it?
Well, the output more than anything. Like this book did feel like I could see the plot turns and like the character development in terms of being on a plot graph. Like, okay, we're at the halfway point, so now we need like this turn to happen. And now,
so he just like turned it out and was done with it. Is that kind of what you mean?
I mean, it's carefully written, but And maybe because I know that he wrote so much, I'm putting that on this book. But I did feel like sometimes while reading it, the characters or the situations would suffer in, or like you said, be a little more surface level in service of like playing a part within the plot development, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
I think someone who's that prolific, whether or not they are even aware of it, are just like, they just have that plot structure down so well that they just fall into it, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I think this is very theme and plot based, not character based. Like if you go on Storygraph, it asks you like, is this more character driven or plot driven? And I would say this is definitely more plot driven, and even more specifically themes. Like what you were saying, if everything's fucked, why not just do what you want? And actually, I have a quote from the book for that. So let me pop that in there. Why should I care? This time I have an answer. So this is Vera circling back to giving a shit. Why should I care? This time I have an answer. If everything's already fucked, the least we can do is take down as many scumbags as possible on our way to oblivion. That's kind of your concept you were talking about, right?
Yeah.
So, and he heavily drives that in, not annoyingly so, but that is definitely the point he's making with this book. So I think the characters kind of fall.
Yeah, she is a concept, like the concept of how you approach the cosmic void, I guess. Like, do you give up and not care, or do you care? And she's kind of like a character study within that. Existence is chaos, and there are no answers. That's another quote, and that also helps me with life.
No, I was going to say with my struggles with what it was in this book that didn't work for me. It's chaos. And it doesn't make sense. There are no answers. So just go with it.
Yeah. Yeah. So let's like maybe do one more step into the narrative, because this is where it really starts turning into maybe horror. And we're going to talk about that. But essentially they do this investigation. They're like, how is this casino so lucky for the patrons and like not be going out of business?
Yeah. Still the most profitable.
Yeah. So they end up finding these cosmic tears in the universe. And the first one that Vera sees is a cosmic tear in a dude's face. And it's basically just like, imagine a black hole, because we all know what that looks like.
Nothingness, right?
Yeah.
No, we all know what a black hole looks like, obviously. No one knows. There's
I don't know.
It's nothing. There's no color. There's no nothing.
But it's just like this spinning space.
Well, what is space? Space is nothing. That's part of the point, I guess.
Yeah.
We all know what it looks like.
But there are these tears in the world, and there's a really cool scene where one of these cosmic tears is like in a man's face, and basically just, where his features should be is this slowly rotating orb of space.
Of nothingness.
And those end up being important to what's going on with the low probability event and what's going on in the casino. I think maybe we'll leave it there as in terms of like how far into the narrative we go, in case you haven't read this.
One more thing that I do appreciate with this like whole nothingness concept that he visualizes in the book is when they're dealing with this nothingness, it manifests in different ways for people. So they see different things. And I think that's cool because it kind of shows the variety of, because Vera will ask like, well, what do you see? What do you see? And everyone sees something different. So it kind of gives like a very subtle look into each person's personality. If you trust what they say too. I mean, they could be lying about what they see. So that was a cool aspect.
Yeah. So overall, interesting read. I mean, as with other books, we do have some different takes on what we thought of the book, but I thought what was interesting in this is how I was like not super into it until the halfway point, and then I was more interested once the plot got moving, and it seemed like you were not quite the opposite, but you really liked the character dynamics.
Yeah, it was funny when because we were both reading this when I was in California before you joined me. I was texting you, I was like, this is so funny. The characters are awesome. And you're like, meh. And then we talked later about it and you're like, this got really good. And I was like, yeah, it's good. So it just really goes to show how different our tastes are. I love it. I absolutely love it. Like even within one book, we can still be, I don't want to say opposite, but different. It's great.
Yeah. Back to the book event, which got me on the Tingle train.
The Tingle train. Wow.
The most absurd thing happened. So he had an FAQ at the end of the event. I should clarify that this book event occurred less than a week after the release of the book. So the book came out on, I don't know, a Tuesday, and the event was on a Friday, something like that, within a few days. And one of the people goes up and was like, is the X at the end of the book inspired by this? Except they said what the X was. And
what this was.
Half the audience was just like, whoa, what are you doing?
Oh, whoops, spoilers.
Yeah. And it didn't destroy the book, but it was a major plot point that they just went up and asked less than a week after the book had been out.
Some people are absolutely oblivious. And do you remember how he responded to it?
I mean, he responded to it well. He focused on, they were asking if a plot point was inspired by this character from a different story. He was like, no, I haven't seen that thing that you're talking about. So he kind of shuffled it on.
Okay. One thing I noticed, that brings up, because I know what point you're talking about, but that point also, which can be generalized. I noticed at one point, someone says, this thing could happen. And Vera's like, that is so unlikely. The odds of that happening are super low. And then it happens. And it really made me curious if that naming of the thing or wondering about the probability of something that was so unlikely then led to it happening. Like if that was a reoccurring thing going on in the book. So if you haven't read it yet, that could be something worth exploring. Okay, so at one point there's a bunch of clovers and they're all 4-leaf clovers. And Vera's like, 1 in 10,000 clovers is a 4-leaf clover. But sometimes they talk about the thing before it was right in front of their faces. So that's what I mean. Like if you could
talking
that.
About it had some effect in bringing it into reality. Oh, that would be interesting.
Like if it raised the probabilities of it happening because they talked about how unlikely it was. That would be a really cool thing. I don't know if it was just a coincidence with that one at the end or if it had a larger place in the book.
Oh, interesting. So let's talk about overall, what did you think of the book?
Overall, I really enjoyed it. I think if I put aside my expectations about what a horror novel should be, I would say I enjoyed it more as like a science fiction, I guess. And I enjoyed the beginning the most. I loved the opening scene. And I think, unfortunately, for me personally, I enjoyed it so much, it overshadowed the rest of the book. But I did enjoy it. I love the cover. It's colorful. It's clever. It's got the Vegas vibes. It's got the Chuck Tingle vibes. I really did enjoy it. I'd give it a 4 out of 5, I think. What about you?
Yeah, I also liked it. As we mentioned, I liked it more once the plot started to pick up in the second half. I did feel a little bit like, okay, I need some horror now after this. It does feel a little more thrillery, but it was a lot of fun. And like I said, meeting Chuck Tingle made me get what he's going for. And as much as I had been telling myself going into the book that like, don't let the author affect your reception of their writing, it also made me realize that there's kind of a spectrum there, because knowing him and seeing what he's about is so a core part of his writing that it changed my feeling of that connection between author and book, which is cool to have something change your opinion.
So the author is not dead.
The author is not dead. Just has a bag over his head.
The anonymous author.
He said too about the bag. It was some like Oscar Wilde quote. He was like, I don't remember if somebody asked him about the bag over his head or if he just like addressed it, but he gave a Oscar Wilde quote, which was, give a man a mask and he will tell you the truth. And that's right. The reason he brought that up is because somebody who went up to ask a question was like, I'm really nervous. And then so they put their like mask on.
I see, yeah.
And he's like, yeah, put it on if it makes you feel less nervous. And then he gave that quote. He's like, by having this bag over my head, I can be I guess he feels more comfortable being, he's not quite flamboyant, that's not the right word, but just like
His
completely
loud
himself
self.
and loud, and it gave him license to take on that personality more.
I completely understand that. As someone who's very introverted and can at times have incredibly bad social anxiety, I really liked wearing a mask. When it was right after we were on lockdown and I was in grad school and we had to start going back to class, but everyone was wearing masks, I felt so much more comfortable wearing a mask. Like, I would prefer that if it didn't fuck up my skin so badly.
Interesting.
But yeah, so that makes total sense to me.
So what have you been reading?
I have more this time.
Yeah, I see there's a long list in front of me here.
Yeah, so for this podcast, I decided to read my first erotica. I don't like romance at all, really. So I'll put up with romantic elements in books, which is fine, but I'm not seeking it out. So therefore, erotica is also kind of off the table for me. But I did read one, and I read a Chuck Tingle one, and I figured I'd go seasonal. And this is the title of the Tingler that I read. This pumpkin spice latte gets me off in a fun and sincere way because it's okay for people to enjoy popular things without being shamed for the perceived basicness of their beverage choices. That was
and you were drinking a pumpkin spice.
I made a homemade pumpkin spice latte, my first of the season. Yeah. And it was actually a hilarious read. Yeah, there was a bit of erotica towards the end, but it was short. I think I read it in less than an hour. I don't know, but it was hilarious. Just, it breaks the fourth wall. This girl combats the basicness of pumpkin spice lattes by ordering rock milk, which is pebbles in a cup, because she wanted to be distinct. And it's just, it doesn't come across when I talk about it as terribly funny, but if you're at all interested in his eroticas, that's a great one to start with. It's like $3 on Amazon, and it was hilarious. I was laughing so hard. It was so good.
Consistent theme in his erotica is hooking up with inanimate objects that have been anthropomorphized.
Yes, and that's exactly what this is. Yeah, she's like, well, I guess I'll order a pumpkin spice latte, and goes up, and the barista's like, would you like a regular one or a Tingleverse version? She's like, what's the difference? She's like, one you drink, the other one, like, it drinks you, or something like that. So very, very hilarious, ridiculous, over the top, totally worth it. It was fun. It made me laugh, and I think that's the most important part. I also just listened to Yellowface by R.F. Kuang. That was a recommendation from my mom. She read it and said that I should read it, and I did, and I read it in like 2 days. It was really good. It's about this white woman who is friends with I don't remember if she's full Chinese American or if she's Hapa or what, but her friend is at least part Chinese, and her friend is a famous author, big in the publishing world, New York Times bestseller, making lots of money author, and they're together, and she dies. She chokes to death while they're together. And then the white girl steals her manuscript, rewrites it, sort of makes it her own words, and publishes it, and becomes a New York Times bestseller, and deals with the publishing world, and then also deals with, it's a lot about social media and how quickly it'll turn on you. And she has this thing hanging over her head, like she didn't really write the book. And it was really, really a fun read, looking at the publishing world. Also just a good read, looking at race and Asian culture within America, which can oftentimes be overlooked, and just really good writing. Kuang does a really good job with her prose. And she wrote Babel, which I also bought recently, and now I'm much more interested in reading that sooner than later, because I was in a bookshop and I was just looking at it, and some random person was like, that was really, really good. You should definitely read that. And I was like, oh, okay. How often does that happen? So I bought it. So now I have to read it because I'm like, oh, okay. Her writing is really, really good. I finished those, and I just now have picked up Melonhead Mayhem, which is the first in the Killer VHS series, which, looking at the covers, they look like R.L. Stine, but more adult, I guess. It's pretty funny. It reads Gremlins meets Gremlins. I'm like a third of the way through, and it's entertaining. I'm enjoying it. It's a series that I've been interested in for a while because it just has that nostalgia, VHS videotape aesthetic to it. Oh, and I'm sorry, the Melonhead Mayhem is by Alex Ebenstein. But I also started reading Isola by Allegra Goodman, another one my mom recommended to me. I guess she just got me at a good time when I'm in between books. So I just started this like last night. I think I listened to like 10 minutes of it. So I have no idea what it's about. I'm going into it blind, other than the fact that when my mom texted me, she's like, it reminds me of the Count of Monte Cristo, but about a woman and based on a true story. So that sounds like something I'd enjoy. Count of Monte Cristo is one of my favorite books. I like women. I like history. So it should be a good read. And I trust my mom's opinion. So I'll let you know how that goes. And then I'm really excited because we finished James and the Giant Peach, which is a fun read. We're getting into spooky season. So the little one and I are reading The Werewolf of Fever Swamp by R.L. Stine. Bum, bum, bum. We watched James and the Giant Peach. And they actually have the model head of Jack Skellington in it as like a pirate because it came out like the year after Nightmare Before Christmas.
Oh, like it's not Jack Skellington in the movie. It's just the same model head.
They just use.
Oh, that's cool. Did you look it up? Like, is it actually the model head?
Yeah, because it's the same director. It's
cool.
It's Henry Selick directed both James and the Giant Peach and Nightmare Before Christmas. He also did Coraline and stuff. So very cool. That was a fun little treat. What about you?
I got two to talk about. I read this novella, Follow Me to Ground by Sue Rainsford. One of the people in our horror writing group, actually the same person who recommended me Piranesi by Susanna Clark, which was awesome. The same person was like, read this book, Follow Me to Ground, which is interesting because, first of all, it's short, so I know I can get through it quick. But also, it's written by someone from Dublin, Ireland, so that always catches my interest.
Woohoo!
And it was cool. It was kind of a little bit of like a changeling, shape-shifting kind of story. Really good writing, and it was fun. It was just cool, again, to read a book recommended by somebody else because it's nice to see what gets other people interested, and I enjoyed it.
Oh, so not recommended by me, by someone else.
This whole podcast, at least half of it is recommended by you.
I know, that's why that was the joke.
Oh, damn. But yeah, it's a quick one, and it was cool. Another graphic novel. I've been all in the comics. I usually don't read comics until the very end of the year when I cared about like the number of books I read for Goodreads.
Look at you getting ahead of the curve.
Yeah. So I read this really cool graphic novel called The High Desert, which is a memoir about the author and illustrator James Spooner. And he's one of the creators of the Afro-punk movement, which is black punk. A lot of the discussions about how black culture is at the foundation of punk rock, which it definitely is. But it's the story of this guy moving to California in the desert area. I don't think the name he gives for where, is there an Apple Valley in California?
I know there's an Appleton in Wisconsin. That's where my family's
Apple
from.
Valley, California in the late 80s.
It is a real...
Oh, okay, never mind. Well, it just sounded like a made-up name. So anyway, it's about this guy's experience moving to the desert as a black kid who quickly discovers punk and gets into punk rock, and what it's like navigating that as going to high school where there's a handful of other black kids, and one of them is like a gangbanger drug dealer, and he's like, not really interested in that. But then he sees this other black kid with his hair all spiked up, wearing a battle jacket and like jumping on their their friends and just being crazy. And he's like, what the heck? What is this? And he starts getting into punk rock. And it's cool. It was one of those stories where it's like, it's simple, but really effective, if that makes sense. It's like a pretty mid-sized cast. And there's the setting in Apple Valley and the high school, and then a little bit of like an interlude where he goes back and visits his dad in New York. It's really cool. It has some interesting things, like he starts up, well, he doesn't start it up, but he joins a band as a bass player, not really knowing what he's doing, but his friend's in it. And their drummer is the brother of a racist skinhead. And he, like the drummer himself too, is kind of like adjacent to that white supremacy culture while playing in a punk band with two black kids from his high school. So there's a lot of conflict there between like racism in the area, and then also like how much racism is allowed and excused by their friends just because, you know, one of the characters likes the same music as they do. It was just really interesting, and it's really cool.
Sounds it.
Yeah. I mean, I know the story of being a white dude in punk rock, so it was cool to read the story of somebody who got into the same culture as I did from a different perspective. And it was really well done. It's a really good story.
Yeah, you could easily write the story about a metalhead too.
Yeah, definitely.
So just so you know, Apple Valley is directly north of San Bernardino. It's in San Bernardino County, close to Hesperia and Victorville. So it's right on the other side of Angeles National Forest, where we used to go hiking sometimes.
Oh, nice.
When we lived down there. So LA-ish area.
The character ends up leaving Apple Valley towards the end, or at least is talking about leaving it, and is like the way that he wants to fight back against white supremacy and racism is by being active and being creative and giving voice to oppressed minorities or you know, just like groups on the fringe more. And then in real life, he did do that. He went out and started the Afro-punk movement and started zines. And like, I think he's vegan too.
Hell yeah.
And just like really got into the culture of it. And he's straight edge. It seems like he wasn't like X's on his hands or anything, but he's like, oh, you can like punk and like not just get drunk. That's cool. So he doesn't just like discover punk, but he discovers punk and then finds out how he can be an individual within the community and have it work for him, because, you know, he meets people who are punks who are just like in it to party or whatever, you know, there's a whole spectrum of it. So it's cool having him find out who he is. And like, he's straightening his hair initially because he's like, that's what punk looks like. But then later on in life, he's got his hair afroed out more, and he's like, he kind of found a balance between his black culture and the punk culture that works for him. So that was cool.
Which is what it should be, right? Like, you should still be your individual self. But funny enough with subcultures is sometimes if you don't conform to that subculture and what other people assume is the correct way to be, then you get shunned, right? Like,
yeah,
you're not goth, you don't only wear black, and you know, or you're not metal because you also like Enya.
It was interesting
These
too.
are not personal experiences.
Not at all. It was interesting too because he goes into a little bit about skinheads, which was confusing for me growing up too, because
we had an experience with that in Vegas.
Yes, we did.
Circling back to Lucky Day.
But like in Apple Valley, the skinheads are racist, like just straight up. But then he goes to New York.
When are skinheads not?
Well, that's the thing. There's the sharp skinheads, which are skinhead. What did it stand for? It was, I don't know.
Skinheads
against racial prejudice, but I don't know where that H comes in. But yeah, there's like
skinhead.
That okay.
S-H.
S-H.
Skinhead.
Yeah. Oh, it's right there in the word. But yeah, there are like anti-racist skinheads. And what's interesting is what he was talking about as originally skinheads came out of two-tone music, like ska music out of the UK. And apparently I can see that. Yeah, the way that the media covered that culture
Here or in the UK?
The UK and here. I'm not sure. This was like the late 80s, so I don't know. But it was essentially like the way the media covered it, it was misinterpreted by racists, and they ended up being like, oh, we're skinheads because we're white supremacists. But it was completely misinterpreted both by the viewers and the media. And so this thing that actually started out as being anti-racist, because the reason these were two-tone bands is because it was bands with black and white members. That's where that name originally came from. And then it just got confusing because when I thought of skinheads growing up too, I was like, oh, racist. But then
then the racists came out of the woodwork and then made skinheads racist.
Yeah. It sounds like regardless of which side of the skinhead spectrum you are, they like violence. I think they just like going out
Sex and violence.
beating each other up.
Violence.
I don't know. Maybe not anymore. I think that I don't know how prevalent skinheads still are today. I don't know. It's a little confusing though, right? Especially like as a black person, you see somebody with their head shaved and they're like all into the skinhead movement, and then you have to question like, which side of the skinheads are you?
Oh, yeah, that is weird.
But yeah, so that was
cool.
so check out The High Desert by James Spooner if you're interested in any of that. Otherwise, last but not least, I'll just say I picked up this anthology a little while ago called Tales of Terror and the Supernatural, which was released in like 1943 or something. And it has a bunch of classic horror stories by authors from like mostly early 20th century, late 19th century classic horror stories. And I've read like 6 or 7 of the stories out of there, and it's a lot of fun. It's good for this time of year.
Nice. We're coming into October, so our next book will be in October. And our next book is Maeve Fly by C.J. Leede, and that'll come out October 14th. That's one I'm also looking forward to. I guess I'm really into the feminine and slashers this season, at least so far. And then we're following that up with the Autumn Springs Retirement Home Massacre by Philip Fracassi, which I actually just finished the other day. That will be a fun one to talk about. And our next book will be Frankenstein by Mary Shelley, which is funny because if you have religiously listened to our podcast, because we all know that you're deeply invested in this podcast, you will know that Frankenstein is not my favorite book. I've read it four times, three or four times. I don't really like it, so it'll be fun to read it yet again.
And I have never read it.
So it's going to be fun to read. And we decided to do this mainly because Del Toro is coming out with a new film in early November. So
November 7th, which is like a few days before the episode comes out.
I think the episode will come out around the 9th. And so it's perfect timing. You can see the film and then listen to us ramble on about Mary Shelley and the classic.
Yeah, that'll be good.
Some good gothic in there. We need a little gothic in our lives.
Yeah, until then, follow us on Dust to Dawn podcast on Instagram, and we'll see you for Maeve Fly.
Well, if you've made it this far, then we didn't scare you off. Thanks for listening to Dust to Dawn, reading horror and weird fiction.
Please rate our podcast, and if you like, follow us on Instagram at Dusk to Dawn Podcast, which is also our Gmail address. Tell us what you liked or didn't like about the show, and let us know if you have any book suggestions. See you next time. Bye.